But the headline here is that the original letters that came to TMZ and local TV stations in Tucson, there were two letters. They threatened to kill Nancy Guthrie. We had not heard that until now. We always knew that there was a consequence threatened if you don't pay by Thursday. Then by Monday, there's a second deadline, and the consequence is that the money goes up, I think, to $6 million. But we never heard that the other consequence was that they threatened to kill Nancy Guthrie. And then, of course, after those two letters, they went silent.
The desert at night is a place of absolute crushing silence. It is a landscape of long, skeletal shadows, where the wind whistling through the saguaro cacti sounds less like nature and more like a whispered warning. In the high desert of Tucson, Arizona, the darkness feels heavy, a physical weight that settles over the suburbs. But on the morning of February 1st, 2026, that silence wasn't just a mood, it became a tomb. Imagine waking up in a home that feels exactly the same as it did when you went to sleep, only to realize the person who anchors your entire world, the one whose presence is as reliable as the desert sunrise, is simply gone. No shattered glass, no signs of a struggle, no screams that woke the neighbors, just a terrifying, hollow space where a life used to be. This is the living nightmare of the Guthrie family. Nancy Guthrie, a woman whose warmth was the heartbeat of her community and her family, vanished into the thin, dry air of the Sonoran landscape. She left behind no struggle, but she did leave a trail, a series of digital breadcrumbs that would eventually lead federal investigators into a dark labyrinth of greed, technical brilliance, and cold-blooded desperation. As veteran journalist Ashleigh Banfield has meticulously documented, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie is not a standard missing persons report. It is an evolving digital thriller, a case that feels more like a cinematic masterpiece of horror than a suburban tragedy. We are now over 60 days into an investigation that has gripped the national consciousness, and just when the trail seemed to be turning to ice, a series of bombshell revelations has reignited the fire. The FBI, an agency defined by its stoic caution and refusal to chase ghosts, has recently signaled something profound. They now believe that the initial ransom notes, the digital demands that sent shivers through the newsrooms of TMZ and local stations, were not the work of a bored internet troll or a distant scammer looking for a quick payday. They were the real deal. They were the voice of the captors. But these weren't just demands for a wire transfer. For the first time, we are learning the dark truth hidden in those early communications. The kidnappers didn't just want $6 million. They issued a chilling, binary ultimatum: pay by the deadline or Nancy Guthrie dies. Ashleigh Banfield's deep dive into this update brings us to a terrifying crossroads. While the family held out hope, the kidnappers were already setting a mechanical clock on a human life. And as we look at the evidence, a haunting question begins to emerge. Was this ever truly about the money? Or was the outcome of this tragedy decided before the first ransom letter was even typed? In this opening chapter of our investigation, we peel back the layers of a case that defies the logic of the modern world. In an era of Ring cameras, constant GPS tracking, and total connectivity, how does a human being simply disappear? And more importantly, who are the they that a mysterious informant claims to have seen with Nancy in the rugged, lawless terrain of Sonora, Mexico? The story of Nancy Guthrie is a reminder that the perfect crime might still exist, hidden in the shadows of the digital age. But as we are reminded, the truth isn't just serious, it's drop-dead serious. If this case has you gripped, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to True Crime Threads. We are following every update in the Guthrie case with the gravity it deserves. Comment below. Do you believe the ransom notes were a genuine attempt at negotiation, or were they a calculated distraction designed to buy the kidnappers time? Share this video on your social platforms. Every share helps keep Nancy's face in the public eye and maintains the pressure on those who know the truth. To understand the gravity of the ransom notes, We must first understand the woman who became the center of this digital storm. Nancy Guthrie was not merely a headline or a high-value target. She was the silent pulse of a family now fractured beyond recognition. In the quiet, sun-drenched corridors of her Tucson home, Nancy was the anchor. Known for a temperament that blended immense warmth with a private, quiet strength, she lived a life defined by the depth of her relationships rather than the flash of her status. There were no shadowy debts in her wake, no bitter legal feuds, and no jilted lovers lurking in the periphery. To the world, she was a vibrant, kind-hearted woman of means. To a predator, she was a mathematical equation of leverage, a life whose disappearance would tear a jagged hole through the national consciousness. The backdrop of this tragedy is the rugged, unforgiving beauty of the Arizona desert, a place where the grandeur of the landscape often masks its lethality. In the weeks leading up to that fateful February morning, there were no overt tremors of the earthquake to come. There were no black SUVs idling at the curb, no heavy breathing on the other end of a midnight phone call. Yet, in hindsight, the perfect crime, as Ashleigh Banfield has explored, suggests a level of surveillance that is bone-chilling. Someone was not just watching, they were studying. They understood the rhythm of the household, the exact timing of the morning routine, and the precise location of the security blind spots where the desert shadows swallow the light. The suspects in this case remain a terrifying plural entity, referred to by investigators and informants alike as they. This was no crime of passion, no desperate snatch and grab fueled by a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a tactical operation, clinical and cold. The investigation quickly revealed a detail that added a frantic, ticking clock to the mystery. Nancy required regular, life-sustaining medication. From the very first hour of her disappearance, her survival was tied to a countdown that her captors surely understood. As her sister, Savannah, and the rest of the Guthrie family took to national television, their voices cracking with the exhaustion of the unknown, the silence from Nancy's end was absolute. But as the FBI moved into the inner sanctum of the investigation, a profile began to emerge, not of a face, but of a mindset. The captors revealed themselves through the only medium they dared to touch, the digital trail. This wasn't a kidnapping for the sake of a grudge. It was a cold, calculated transaction. The precision of the Bitcoin addresses and the technical sophistication used to mask their origin suggested a group that viewed human life as a bargaining chip in a high-stakes game of encryption. They were playing chess with federal agents, moving Nancy like a piece on a board, leading her family into a reality where the woman they loved was being reduced to a series of alphanumeric codes in a heartless, virtual auction. The tension in the Guthrie case didn't just build, it curdled. As days bled into weeks, the investigation shifted from a frantic physical search into a psychological battleground defined by red flags and digital shadows. As Ashleigh Banfield has emphasized, the sheer sophistication of this crime is what makes it truly haunting. In the year 2026, we are told that privacy is an artifact of the past, that every movement is tracked by a satellite, a doorbell camera, or a pinging cell tower. Yet the entity that took Nancy managed to vanish, as if they had stepped through a tear in reality. One of the most disturbing red flags emerged not from the desert, but from the digital void, the Bitcoin addresses. This wasn't a handwritten note left on a kitchen counter. This was a modern, clinical extortion. The kidnappers utilized the same Bitcoin wallet for multiple communications sent to TMZ and local news stations like KVOA and KGUN. To Harvey Levin and the FBI, this was a clear signal of intent. It revealed a perpetrator who was comfortable in the darkest corners of the internet, someone who didn't just want cash, but demanded a non-traceable, decentralized ransom that bypassed every banking safeguard the FBI monitors. But the real foreshadowing of a tragic outcome came through a subtle, sickening shift in the tone of the communications. Early on, the messages were frantic, pushing for a $6 million payout by a strict Monday deadline. They used words like consequence. Then suddenly, the immediacy vanished. A mysterious informant who claimed to know the kidnappers sent an email that sent a chill through the FBI's task force. On a Tuesday, he wrote that time is of the essence. By Wednesday, his message had changed to 6 words that would haunt the family forever. Time is no longer of the essence. In the world of true crime, those words are often a death knell. As Harvey Levin noted, why would a scammer, someone purely after a payout, deliberately remove the sense of urgency? You only say time is no longer a factor when the asset you are bargaining with is no longer viable. It suggested that somewhere in that 24-hour window, the leverage shifted because Nancy may have succumbed to the ordeal, or worse. Another red flag was the sheer arrogance of the informant. He didn't just offer information. He ranted about his ego being bruised by the FBI's dismissal. He claimed he could deliver the kidnappers on a silver platter, but grew vitriolic that he was being treated like a common fraudster. This wasn't the behavior of a grieving witness or a concerned citizen. It was the behavior of a narcissist who felt he was the smartest person in the room, someone who viewed Nancy's life as a secondary detail to his own validation. While the world watched Savannah Guthrie return to the anchor desk, her eyes reflecting the exhaustion of 65 days of hell, the red flags continued to pile up across the border. Reports began to surface of sightings in Sonora, a region known for its rugged, lawless stretches. The informant claimed to have seen Nancy alive there with them, always plural, always a collective shadow. But as the FBI's IT team spent hundreds of hours scouring TMZ's servers, they found only dead ends. The masks weren't just on the kidnappers' faces, they were built into the very code of their communications. The perfect crime was no longer a theory, it was becoming a terrifying, silent reality. The moment of the crime itself remains one of the most haunting voids in recent history. It was a clinical, near-silent extraction that has left even seasoned investigators in a state of disbelief. Not a single fingerprint was out of place. Not a single hair was left behind to tell the story of who had breached the sanctuary of the Guthrie home. The gravity of the situation shifted from a disappearance to a calculated kidnapping when the first digital ransom note arrived. It landed in the inbox of TMZ and local news stations like a lightning bolt. This wasn't a desperate plea for help or the rambling of a lunatic. It was a cold-blooded business proposition. The kidnappers laid out their terms with the detached tone of a corporate merger. They demanded $6 million. They set a clock. And hidden within those initial notes, a detail only recently confirmed by the FBI and shared by Ashleigh Banfield, was the ultimate threat, the promise of death if the price wasn't met. The cinematic horror of this moment lies in the jarring contrast between the sunny, suburban safety of the Guthrie home and the dark, digital underworld where her life was being auctioned. Every hour that passed was a physical blow to her family. As Savannah Guthrie and her sister Annie waited for news, the kidnappers were likely already moving Nancy across the border, navigating the lawless stretches of the Sonoran desert. The crime was not just the physical abduction, it was the psychological warfare that followed. The captors didn't just take Nancy's body, they took control of the narrative, using Bitcoin and encrypted emails to ensure that the family's wealth and influence, normally a shield, became a target. It was a crime designed for the year 2026, high-tech, untraceable, and devastatingly effective. While the authorities searched for a physical trail in the Arizona dirt, the kidnappers were already miles ahead, leaving behind nothing but a digital echo and a family's world in ruins. The investigation that followed Nancy Guthrie's disappearance was not a typical police dragnet. It was a desperate race against a digital phantom. As Ashleigh Banfield has highlighted, the FBI's involvement turned the case into a two-way street of high-tech surveillance and deep frustration. While the Pima County Sheriff's Department combed the physical desert, the FBI embedded itself within the servers of TMZ, working, hand in glove, with Harvey Levin's IT team for hundreds of hours. They weren't just looking for an IP address, they were hunting for a ghost who knew exactly how to hide. The forensic trail was a series of baffling contradictions. On one hand, you have a physical crime scene at the home where blood was found near the entrance, DNA that federal testing confirmed belonged to Nancy. On the other hand, you have a digital trail that feels almost too clean. The FBI attempted a sophisticated sting on the Bitcoin address provided in the original ransom notes, hopping to tickle the wire, and trace the movement of the $6 million. They monitored every hop of the blockchain, waiting for the currency to touch a regulated exchange or be converted to pesos in Mexico. But every lead hit a brick wall of encryption. Then there is the strange case of Derek Collier. Arrested in California and extradited to Arizona, Collier appeared to be the breakthrough the world was waiting for. He was a man caught in the web of the investigation, facing federal charges for extortion. But as the investigation deepened, a cruel reality emerged. Collier wasn't the mastermind. He was a secondary predator, a scammer who saw a family's public agony and tried to profit from it by sending harrowing text messages to Nancy's sister, Annie. His arrest provided a moment of legal justice, but no answers for Nancy. It underscored the ne'er-do-well element that plagues high-profile cases, where the real trail is buried under a mountain of opportunistic noise. As the 60-day mark passed, the investigation took on a darker, more global tone. The FBI revisited the Catalina Foothills neighborhood, focusing on a vacant home near Nancy's property and questioning residents about a masked suspect seen on Nest doorbell footage carrying an Ozark Trail backpack. They even utilized blue-fly signal detection technology, hopping to pick up a transmission from Nancy's pacemaker, a high-tech Hail Mary in a case where traditional tracking had failed. Harvey Levin's spidey senses, as he told Ashleigh, began to tingle at one specific detail: the shift in the kidnapper's urgency. Ex-FBI experts have noted that the captors showed a chilling lack of concern for Nancy's survival, seemingly more focused on the psychological torture of the family than the health of their 84-year-old hostage. Despite the search of thousands of Uber records and the processing of over 20,000 tips, the perfect crime remained intact. The investigation was at a standstill, caught between the blood on the floor and the encrypted silence of the Sonoran wind. While the search for Nancy Guthrie continues to haunt the headlines, the legal machinery has already begun to grind against those lurking in the periphery of this tragedy. In a case this high-profile, the courtroom becomes a stage not just for justice, but for the exposure of human depravity. The first major legal movement centered on Derek Collier, the California man whose digital footprint collided with the Guthrie family's nightmare. Collier wasn't standing in the dock for the kidnapping itself, but for a crime that felt just as visceral: federal extortion. In a courtroom in Arizona, the proceedings painted a picture of a man who saw a family's public unraveling and viewed it as a financial opportunity. Federal prosecutors detailed how Collier sent harrowing text messages to Nancy's sister, Annie, and her husband, Tommy, claiming to hold the keys to Nancy's life in exchange for a payout. Though Collier was extradited to face these federal charges, his presence in court provided a hollow victory. For the Guthrie family, sitting in those pews, the sentencing of a scammer offered no information on where Nancy was actually being held. It was a stark reminder of the legal complexity of modern kidnapping, where the secondary perpetrators, those ne'er-do-wells trying to capitalize on the chaos, are often caught long before the actual kidnappers. Beyond Collier, the FBI has been building a federal affidavit that reads more like a thriller than a legal document. This affidavit outlines the trail of the mysterious informant who has been hounding TMZ and Harvey Levin. While no arrest has been made for this specific individual yet, the legal groundwork is being laid. The FBI has made it clear: anyone using this case to hoax or extort the family, even if they claim to have information on a silver platter, is committing a federal crime. The case remains a collection of cold affidavits and empty chairs, a legal stalemate where the evidence is encrypted and the suspects are ghosts in the Sonoran wind. The emotional weight of this case doesn't reside in the digital code or the forensic affidavits. It lives in the hollowed-out voices of those Nancy left behind. For over 60 days, the Guthrie family has lived in a state of suspended animation, a purgatory where every phone notification is a potential lifeline or a finishing blow. As Ashleigh Banfield has poignantly noted, the shift in the family's public messaging has been one of the most heartbreaking developments of this entire ordeal. Early on, the pleas were for Nancy's safe return, a desperate call for her to come home for dinner, to take her medicine, to be the sister and friend they knew. But recently, the tone has shifted. In a move that signaled a devastating acceptance, Savannah Guthrie and her family addressed the kidnappers on social media with a different kind of offer. They spoke of wanting her back so we can celebrate with her, a phrase that many, including Harvey Levin, interpreted as a plea for a body. It was the sound of a family transitioning from hope to the need for closure, a white flag raised in the face of an unthinkable reality. The community in Tucson and the broader public who have followed Nancy's story are grappling with a collective sense of vulnerability. If a woman with Nancy's resources, family, and public profile can be snatched from a quiet residential street and vanish into the desert, what does that mean for everyone else? There is a palpable fear that the safety we feel in our neighborhoods is an illusion, easily pierced by someone with a Bitcoin wallet and a dark intent. Behind the scenes, the toll on Nancy's inner circle is immeasurable. Her sister Annie and her husband Tommy have had to endure not just the loss, but the predatory harassment of scammers like Derek Collier. They have been forced to navigate a world where their grief is a target for extortion. Each day that passes without a breakthrough at the FBI or a ping from a Sonoran cell tower is a fresh wound. The human cost of this perfect crime is found in the silence of Nancy's home, the unopened medicine bottles, and the faces of her family members who must now stand before cameras and talk about her in the past tense. They are no longer just fighting for a rescue. They are fighting to ensure that Nancy Guthrie is not remembered as a cold case, but as a person who deserved to be found. In the eyes of her loved ones, the $1 million reward isn't about the money. It's a desperate attempt to buy back a piece of their shattered world. As we stand at the 65-day mark of the Nancy Guthrie disappearance, we are left staring into a digital abyss. This case has become a haunting blueprint for the modern age, a perfect crime, where the perpetrators exploited the very technology meant to keep us connected to ensure Nancy remained lost. From the sun-scorched trails of Sonora, Mexico, to the encrypted servers of TMZ in Los Angeles, the trail is a jagged line of Bitcoin addresses and ransom letters that lead everywhere and nowhere at once. The FBI's recent admission that the original threats were real has changed the stakes forever. It confirms that this was never just a hoax or a prank gone wrong. It was a calculated abduction with a lethal deadline. As Ashleigh Banfield reminds us, the truth in this case is a moving target, shifting between the cold data of forensic affidavits and the raw, visceral pain of a family begging for answers. The mystery of the informant who claims she is gone, yet remains too arrogant to cooperate without his fair payout, hangs over the investigation like a dark cloud. Is Nancy Guthrie still out there, hidden in the vast silence of the Sonoran desert? Or did the clock truly run out on that Wednesday in February when the kidnappers decided that time was no longer of the essence? As long as the $1 million reward stands and the FBI continues to monitor the digital movement of those Bitcoin wallets, there is a flicker of light. But for now, the desert remains silent and the digital ghosts remain uncaught. The question that remains for all of us is this: in a world where every move is supposedly tracked and every life is digitized, how much of our safety is just an illusion? And if the perfect crime truly exists in 2026, who will be the next to vanish into the code? What do you believe was the turning point in the communication? Was the informant telling the truth about the timeline, or was it all a smoke screen to protect the kidnappers? Let us know your theories in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the Nancy Guthrie case compelling, please like this video and subscribe to True Crime Threads. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a breaking update. Share this video on social media. The more eyes we have on this case, the harder it is for the truth to stay hidden. Remember, if you have any information, contact 1-800-CALL-FBI. Until next time, stay vigilant.